Today we're going to go through the process of installing a T-blade into a wing. This is a Vibe 2 and this is an offset T-blade that is included with the Vibe 2s. So first off, this is the tang of the blade. This part is the part where it goes into the wing tip. So the first thing you want to do is mask out on the wing itself where the tang is going to go in. I've masked the wingtip with blue 3M masking tape. On the Vibe 2, you'd want the blade to be about 5 to 7 millimeters away from the hinge line. So let's mark that out. So here you can see that the tang is marked. And basically, that is the area of foam that you would have to remove for the T-blade to slip into the wingtip. Before you cut the notch, make sure you verify that after your T-blade is put into the wingtip, that your wingspan is still within the 1500 millimeter rule. On the Vibe 2, you would cut approximately 3 millimeters from the wingtip. So now that the notch is cut, you're going to have to remove the foam from within the wingtip so that the T-blade can be slipped inside. Now remember, you already drew the outline for the tang, so you know what area it's going to occupy inside the wingtip. And so I use a long drill bit with a handle, and I basically remove all the foam within this area. First I drill in through the two sides so that it limits how much foam I remove. And I use a piece of masking tape as a guide for how deep it has to go in. After you drill out the two sides, you can proceed to remove the foam in between. When you're verifying that the blade fits inside, you want to push it in softly, because if you have missed any foam within this area and you press it in too hard, it's going to crush the Roja cell and it's going to bulge out onto the skin itself. Okay, so everything fits perfectly. Now you want to prep the tang to be glued into the wingtip. First, you rough out the two sides. After you finish roughing it, make sure you clean it properly. The next step that I like to do is to cut a few grooves into the tang so that it bites into the epoxy a little bit better. So here it is. I used a Dremel with the burr tip and I cut a few notches onto the side. Don't overdo this, because if you overdo the notches, for one thing, you might introduce air bubbles when you plug this into the epoxy, and secondly, it might affect the integrity of the tang itself. So fit it one last time just to make sure everything is as it should be. Okay. On the bottom of the wing, I take a look at where the T-blade goes. Then I drill a hole through the bottom skin, inject the epoxy into the wingtip. It's going to fill up this area and it's going to push all the air out of that hole. Next, you're going to mix up some epoxy. This is the epoxy that I use most of the time when I'm assembling models. Give it a very, very thorough mix. Now for this next step, I use disposable syringes. If you don't have disposable syringes available, then you can use a stick to scoop in the epoxy as well, but with a syringe it's faster, it's easier. Now your syringe is filled with epoxy. Stand your wing up so that the notch is facing upwards. So the epoxy will come down and exit out through this hole over here. The epoxy I use is straight 30-minute epoxy. I don't mix in any fillers or micro balloons because I don't want it to be so thick so that it can come down and come out. If you thicken it too much, then there's a very good chance that you would have air bubbles in here. And because of how we cleared out the foam in here, there's actually not going to be a lot of space for excess resin. So then it's very important to do the clearing out. Now see a little bit of resin within this hole, and you know that it's all filled up. I would put in my throwing blade. And as you can see, resin is going to come out from here and from the top. Now you're going to want to start wiping away and cleaning up all the excess epoxy. Now everything is clean. You're going to want to seal up this hole, and we're going to use a piece of tape on either side of this so that for anything that comes squeezing out, it's going to be very nice. For this, I like to use Kapton tape. This is the same tape we use for gap seals. We found that when we stick this to the epoxy, the sticky side to the epoxy, it's very easy to remove afterwards, and it leaves a very, very nice and shiny surface. The next step after this is all sealed is to clamp it all down. Okay, so it's cured overnight. Let's see how it looks. The Vibe 2 offset blade and tools needed are linked in the description below. If you liked the video, please hit like and subscribe. See you next time.